My ridiculous quest to play every game ever made continues, but this time we're going way back. Back to a time when you only had a single button and a joystick. Back to a time when every sprite was methodically simple because of how limited the color palette and the resolution were. Today, we're going to take a look at 10 Atari 2600 titles. My father passed away earlier this year, and one of my most distinct memories of him is the time he spent playing video games. It's because of him that some of my earliest video game memories are of playing the Atari 2600, even at such a young age. So, this one is dedicated to him. First game up today because I want to hit the easiest target first is E.T., released in 1982. This game was designed and developed by the brilliant mind of one man, Howard Scott Warshaw. Notoriously, E.T. used to be hailed as one of the worst games ever made. It often takes half of the responsibility for what's known as the video game crash of 1983, and most of the cartridges were buried in New Mexico along with a pile of 700,000 games. These days, it isn't that bad, and Warshaw is really a genius when you think about it. He took the first procedural approach to a time challenge that modern indie developers take on all the time with jams. He was also the first person to develop a game as fast as he did, and whether or not you think it was great is irrelevant. He made history. The game works like everyone says. You walk around and fall into holes. Sometimes there's an item in the hole. Sometimes there's a flower in the hole that blooms. I'm not sure what the objective is since I haven't read the manual, but I did figure out how to escape from the hole without much effort, so I really don't think this was as bad as everyone says it was. It really just amounts to being careful, which is what the actual movie E.T. does with the character. The entire thing is careful, procedural, and every step you take reduces the score on screen. The idea is to complete the objective before the score runs out, which makes it more of a minigame than anything, but I've played a lot of games and this is by no means the worst game I've ever played. It's not even close. Next game on the list is Atari Boxing, released in 1980. This is an Activision game and it works pretty well. You rotate the joystick and dance around a little bit, and then when you have an opening at the face, you press the button to throw a punch. This is kind of like an advanced Rock'em Sock'em Robots, but where the winner is the guy with the most points. It's not easy, but it isn't difficult either, and I could see it being a really good two-player game. Punches have some depth to how they work, but they aren't hard to understand. If you throw a punch too close or you hit your opponent's glove, you won't get a point. You need to make sure that the distance and weight of the punch makes a solid impact, which is the most basic principle of punching. It might sound silly now, with how complex video games are in the modern age, but I admire the depth put into this one for the time period. Game number 3 is Tax Avoiders, released in 1982. This game is funny, but not very hard, and kind of broken. You play as a guy collecting money, and once you have money, the tax guy will come and try to tax you, so you literally run away from him. This game is functional, but I almost instantly found an exploit that made it easy to get points. It pretty much amounts to climbing up the left platform, having the tax guy follow you, and then repeatedly climbing a ladder on the right platform. Every time you move up or down, the taxman follows you, so repeatedly climbing the ladder will restrict his movement. He does move forward slowly, so you have to keep moving to keep it working, but if you do it for long enough, the game will just stop working altogether. Good game. Game number 4 is Gangster Alley, also released in 1982. It's a stationary shooting gallery where you shoot the bad guys before they shoot you, and while you're doing that, you shoot this other guy who's running back and forth across the top of the screen so he doesn't drop bombs on you. I'm not entirely sure what the idea is. Every once in a while, the screen would go dark and the enemies would move a little bit faster or move in a different pattern, but I really had no clue what was going on or what my goal was other than shoot stuff. It's fairly basic, and just on a first glance, you would think it's a game made for a light gun or something, but no. The cursor is just the normal way to play this game. It's sort of a progenitor to arcade rail shooters, but with no rail. Fifth game up is something special. Chuck Norris Superkicks, released in 1984, is an obvious runoff of the video game crash being a huge blow to the industry. When the license ran out for the name Chuck Norris, this game was re-released as Kung Fu Superkicks, but this game sucks, and there's nothing redeemable about it. So it's a mystery to me how it wound up with ports and re-releases. You walk forward up this map thing, and when you get into a fight, some dudes run right and left constantly until you get up close and they kick your ass. Pressing the button blocks, holding the joystick down and pressing the button kicks. It barely works, and it sucks. I couldn't suffer playing this one for more than a few minutes just to capture the footage that you're seeing. This actually is one of the worst games I've ever played. Game number 6, Revenge of the Beefsteak Tomatoes, released in 1983. This one's pretty good. It's a spaceship shooter where you move around on the screen, dodging incoming fire and shooting at the beefsteak tomatoes that move in from either side of the screen. It's simple for sure, but something that impresses me here is the 8-directional movement. The ship sprite itself actually rotates diagonally. The missile from the ship doesn't change direction, but the ship itself does, and that's a really cool detail. It's repetitive, but it's good quick fun. Game number 7 is Human Cannonball, released in 1979. It's a non-military version of an artillery firing simulation, and you can tell. This is less like a game and more like a demonstration. You tilt the cannon up and down to a certain point depending on the wind, and then you fire the guy out of the cannon. Then you move this basket to catch the guy. It isn't really hard, but it isn't designed to be. I think this one is rather impressive for the use of physics. It's 44 years old now, and it's crazy to think that we were already capable of simulated physics back then. Game number 8 is Berzerk, released in 1980. This game is legendary for what it is and what it does, but every time I think about it, I can't help but think about that creepypasta from from way back in the day. This game is fondly remembered for its incredibly intuitive action shooter gameplay, and all of the really crazy robot dialogue that plays while you're fighting. It wasn't the first game ever to use speech synthesis, but it is among the first few, and it's used really well. It's dynamic. It comes with this special dialogue that only plays if certain other dialogue plays, and that's honestly super impressive. This game itself is another 8-directional shooter, but here you move from room to room, tactically shooting robots that are moving closer to you. Touching the walls is instant death for you and your enemies, so you can't really just hug the walls and abuse some kind of pixel-perfect hit registration error. This game is designed really well, and it's fun to try to get further each time. Game number 9, we're almost at the end. Bank Heist, released in 1983, is sort of like Pac-Man with a crime spree twist. On every screen, you rob 3 banks, and once you've done that, the goal is to avoid the police and get to the top right exit to get to the next level. It's incredibly simple and really repetitive, but so is Pac-Man, and I imagine this must have been fun for somebody. It isn't really bad, it just isn't really anything. If you want to look at it really differently, this is kind of the precursor to every crime game ever made. It's one of the first games ever where you play as the criminal trying to get away. In that way, it pioneered the whole idea, and you can thank it for Grand Theft Auto 5 today. Game number 10, I can't believe we've played 10 games already. James Bond 007. This game is wild. You play as a car, and while you're driving forward, you've got to jump over holes that are on fire, and shoot down helicopters, while you avoid these flying clothes irons with nipples that drop yellow on you. What the fuck does any of this have to do with James Bond? I don't remember the part in Dr. No where the flying clothing iron pissed on James Bond's car while he was jumping over a fiery pit. Maybe I just didn't see that cut of the movie or something. Whatever the hell is going on here, it's really weird. And that was 10 Atari 2600 games. Did you notice that even though the controller only had a joystick and a single button, none of these games were the same? Every single one of them does something different, whether it's good or bad. It's amazing just how much was accomplished with so little. None of the games I played today were above 6 kilobytes in size, which makes this simultaneously the smallest and the largest set of games I've played to date. It's really fun and really interesting, and now I can mark off 10 of the total 470 games released for the Atari 2600. We're far from done with the library, but at least for now I can rest with a comfortable start. Thank you, and have a nice day.